Now, the fact that SATA-based SSDs kind of plateaued in performance around 2015, it's become very difficult for manufacturers to differentiate their drives from the competition. However, apparently teamgroup really doesn't have that problem. The SSD that we're looking at today is called the Delta Max RGB from teamgroup, and it's actually the second RGB SSD that they've ever made. I think it looks a lot better than the first one. The first one was like very aggressively gamer looking, whereas this one looks more sleek and minimalistic. Now, I just want to get this out of the way fairly early on in the video. This isn't going to be a very in-depth review of the SSD, it's going to be more like an overview. I am going to do some basic benchmarks just to validate the manufacturer's claims, but more than that, it's going to be more of let's look at the features and how well implemented are they. And there's obviously going to be a bit of an RGB rant sprinkled in there because, you know, it is my channel and it is RGB. In my experience, if you're a gamer using an SSD as a boot drive, there isn't much of a difference between various drives on the market, because like this, which is called the SSD by Terosis, great named product. This is the cheapest SSD that you can buy on Amazon Canada, and honestly this thing performs great. Like, I can't tell much of a difference between this as a boot drive for a gaming system and something like a Samsung 860 EVO as a boot drive for a gaming system. And with some quick benchmarks, I can see that the drive does actually deliver exactly what the manufacturer says that it would. Now, while actually benchmarking the drive, something weird did happen. You can't actually monitor temperatures on this drive. I tried two pieces of monitoring software. The first one was Crystal Disk Info, and the second one was just Hardware Info, and well, neither of them worked. I then contacted teamgroup to ask them why this was happening, and they said that they actually disabled temperature monitoring on this SSD. They gave two reasons for this. I think it's a bit weird, but the reasons that they gave was, one, they feel that temperature monitoring on SSDs isn't that accurate, and the second reason they gave was that temperature information can easily be faked in reviews. Which I don't know if I should take that as a personal insult or not. So I was using a Crystal Disk Mark, and I used many different file sizes and ran each test like 7 times or 9 times, and it was running for over an hour and I was still getting consistent performance results. So I couldn't really get the drive to actually thermally throttle. Although it was thermally in like the perfect situation. The drive is right in front of a case with pretty good airflow, 2 fans blowing straight on it, and because I don't use heating in the winter in my house, the ambient temperature was like 15 degrees inside. Now, another thing that worries me a little bit in the spec sheet of this SSD is actually its rated endurance. Now, the 500 gig version, which I was testing in this video, is rated for 120 terabytes worth of writes, which, mixed with a 3-year warranty, isn't amazing compared to the competition. I mean, something like a Samsung 860 EVO, which is a very high endurance drive, but that's rated for 300 terabytes and has a 5-year warranty. So that is something that you should take into account. And honestly, the selling point isn't anything other than the fact that it is a really good looking drive. So let's get into the physical breakdown of the SSD. Now, on the front, it's got kind of like a mirror finish, which looks really nice in my opinion. It is a fingerprint magnet, but they do include like a little cloth, like a glasses cleaning cloth to clean it, so you can clean it nicely after you've kind of mounted it in the system. But once you've got it installed in a system, it looks amazing. As you can see here in the waifu graphics card system, it looks really good, especially in a very colorful RGB system. I don't think it'll work as well in a more neutral system, but you can set the color to whatever it is that you want it to. It is addressable. But here is where I get into my rant about RGB. Now, this isn't specifically a teamgroup issue, this is just an RGB in general issue. Now, this is a SATA drive, so it does have SATA power and SATA data, but you also need a USB connection to actually power the LEDs in the drive. So if you don't have that USB plugged in, there's no RGB at all. One thing to bear in mind with this SSD is that it comes with 2 versions of that USB cable. One of them connects to your motherboard via a front panel USB 2 header. The other one connects via like a weird 3-pin version of the RGB connector. And the LEDs are only software controllable if you use that RGB header. So what that means is that a bunch of motherboards which, you know, at a glance are compatible with the RGB on this SSD aren't necessarily. In fact, I only had one motherboard that I could actually software control the LEDs with, and I had to connect it via like an adapter that you get in the box. Now that was really irritating, but the thing is, I think the best configuration for this drive is the standard RGB lighting. Like, I think when you try and configure it, it doesn't look as good. I mean, I know I'm demoing it on top of a PC under a table here, so that's kind of why, but I mean, I couldn't get it working in a system that I could move around or whatever. But yeah, so I think leaving it in its standard configuration is when it looks the best. Now, I feel a bit bad making the RGB is so incompatible with stuff rant in this video, but it's an SSD. It's got a data connection and it's got a power connection. Why can't you just run the LEDs through that? I'm not an engineer. I don't know if that's possible. I can't imagine that it would actually affect the performance of the drive. I don't know, maybe I'm asking for too much here. And that brings us to the point where we should discuss how much this drive costs and whether or not you should actually buy one. Now, the 500 gig version, which I tested here, costs about $84, which for a 500 gig SSD at the end of 2019 is actually quite expensive. Now, the prices for SSDs are a bit weird at the moment because it is Black Friday, so everything's on sale, but you can get a 500 gig version of the 860 EVO Samsung drive for like 60 bucks. The thing is though, if you want a fairly unique SSD to tie together your awesome looking RGB PC, this is one of your only options. And honestly, it's a pretty good option. It looks really good and, you know, it's an SSD, right? It performs pretty well as a boot drive. So let me know in the comment section below if you would buy an SSD like this or if you'd go with something like the Samsung 860 EVO instead. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. Follow me on Twitch, where I stream on Saturdays, which is probably going to be later today. I've got an Instagram, a Twitter, and a Discord server. And until the next video, bye-bye.